Good morning on this Tuesday morning. I'm Pete Najarian. This is the Take for Market Rebellion. And I got to tell you something, record highs? Absolutely. Take a look over at the S&P 500. Take a look at the Dow. Extraordinary move to the upside. And it's obviously been day after day after day of all these numbers moving to the upside. But now all of a sudden setting new record numbers. We closed up 64 points yesterday on the Dow. We've closed up 21 points on the S&P. Just an amazing run that we've had of late. And a part of the factors that go along with this run has been the leadership and this rotation. And we bring this up all the time. And it's something that I think is very, very important to point out. Also, take a look at that volatility index that we've been talking about time and time again. 23 is not too terribly long ago, just a few weeks ago. And now here we find ourselves down in the 15s, the low 15s. As a matter of fact, I'll cheat a little bit and go into today. We actually started below 15 early this morning. So a lot of volatility getting just crushed down to the downside. And a lot of the time that is associated with the comfort that people are getting from the rotation and what we're seeing in the markets themselves. So NASDAQ had an absolutely incredible day yesterday, up 136 points. When you look at what's been going on with earnings season, that's certainly been part of it, and that just continues to flow, and it's flowing into today as well. But before we get there, Bitcoin, right around that 63,000 level. We had the 10-year right around 163. It's been pretty pinned in that area. Yes, it popped up to 1.7 the other day, but that was in a blink, and it was gone, and it was already pulling right back again. So what were the areas that really were most impressive yesterday? And we've talked about this on a couple of occasions. Consumer discretionary, absolutely an explosive move. Now, it's interesting because when I say rotations, this is a great example of it. We oftentimes have had leadership from technology, semiconductors. Then we start to move over to somewhere else. Maybe it's energy and materials. Maybe it's the industrials. Maybe it's financials. Well, consumer discretionary, definitely the leader yesterday, up 2%. Energy, up about 1.5%. You had materials up nearly 1%. Financials, not so much. As a matter of fact, kind of easing into that red area. But it just shows you that the different leadership is why we are seeing the broader side of things making a nice move to the upside. So what were some of the big highlights of yesterday? You can't turn anywhere other than to say Tesla, right? When you see Tesla up 12+%, that's a pretty monstrous move. And oh, by the way, how about volumes yesterday? I don't know how many folks track this. You know that we do here at Market Rebellion, talk about the options and the option volumes all the time, 38.5 million contracts yesterday. Well, on top of that, how about the volume that we had yesterday in Tesla alone? And Tesla, 3.5 million contracts trading yesterday. Facebook, 800,000, Apple, 600,000. Gives you a little perspective on how much activity and everything has been flowing towards Tesla. And we've talked about this. And this is something that we were talking about in the last week or two, where we're going back all the way where Tesla was trading in the middle 800s, 835, and started to see huge call buying, massive call buying. And that just continued, and continues to trade. So that's something that stood out. Moderna, up about 7%. That's an up and down, and we know that. That's been all over the place. Take a look over at Nucor. Talk about some of these material stocks. Oftentimes we go over to U.S. Steel. We talk about Freeport Mac. Take a look at Nucor yesterday, up about 7%. Those Chinese names under a little bit of pressure, except if you look over in the EV market. The EV market's been absolutely explosive. When I take a look at all those various names, from Tesla to Blink to Nikola to QuantumScape to Xpeng, all of those names having a pretty interesting day and a lot of strength and a lot of option activity in so many in the EV space. It's absolutely been one of the areas that's definitely dominated what we're looking at for unusual option activity. Something we talked about last night. Matter of fact, had a nice brief conversation with Tony Dwyer, who was our special guest last night with the Market Roundtable for Mondays. Did an absolutely outstanding job of just dissecting and giving everybody a little bit of a flavor for where his views are right now and where he thinks the markets are going. So that was something, if you didn't get a chance to see that, you really owe it to yourself to watch anytime that Tony's on and he's talking with us. So this morning, start off strong once again. Earnings starts off strong once again. You look over at the Dow, up about 100 points, NASDAQ up about 100 points in the pre-market. We did drift down early and then bounced right back in this first hour. I was just looking. The NASDAQ was up about 130 points. Dow was up about 130 points. Consumer discretionary, again, leadership role. It led right out of the gate, up a little bit less than 1%. Last I looked, up about 2%. Energy started off a little flat. That actually is up about 1%. Technology starting to take off a little bit, along with semiconductors, up about 1% or maybe even a little bit more. I look over at crude at 84. I look at the 10-year at 163. Kind of a whole hum right now for the 10-year, but crude sort of bouncing around and moving around, and that's okay. That's exactly what you might expect, as a matter of fact, after this amazing run up through 85 yesterday. A little bit of a pullback into the close and a slight bounce. I did talk about volatility right around that low 15s. We did get underneath that, but the low 15 seems to be the area. So when we see a lot of what's been going on, and I'll tell you what, earnings driving things, well, tonight could be a very, very interesting night. We've got Google, we've got Microsoft, we've got AMD, we've got Twitter. Got a really active night tonight, right after the close for earnings. Earnings has been on fire, and obviously giving the markets a little bit of extra fuel. As a matter of fact, speaking of earnings and fuel, how about Facebook? Facebook last night, they were talking about adding $50 billion to the share buybacks. They beat on earnings. They did miss on revenues. It looks like people were able to look past that. We had some huge option activity yesterday in Facebook, looking to the upside. About a $20 call spread to the upside was bought. Zuckerberg had a lot to talk about yesterday, and he was a bit on the defensive about the whistleblower, and it looks like people were digesting that pretty nicely because of the way the stock was at least moving in the after hours and a little bit this morning. So some of the big movers today, earnings driven in some cases, but UPS strong. Wow, what a nice move to the upside, 7.5%. Take a look at NVIDIA. NVIDIA has been hitting almost on a consistent basis, almost daily with their options, very much like we'd oftentimes seen and have seen with AMD. But we've seen this time and time again, very early in the session, NVIDIA buyers, and the stock just continues on its move. So today it was up about 4.5% early. I took just a little peek a little while ago. It was up 8%. An extraordinary move once again from NVIDIA. And those options that they're coming into it for in the morning, absolutely explosive. High dollar amount, but explosive and reactive almost immediately. We've got some strength. When I look over at the casinos, I look at Wynn, I look at Las Vegas Sands, I look at Caesars, all positive territory. As a matter of fact, we may have something in that category with unusual. Let me just finish this and we'll get into the unusual. So Cisco and Apple leading the Dow today, strong right out of the gates. We do have a little bit of weakness here and there. Amazon's a little bit higher today, but I look over at Lockheed Martin, that down over 7%. So not everything is in the green and looking so great today. There's a couple things out there that are definitely struggling a little bit, Lockheed being one of those names. But it's been on a tear to the upside, so a pullback is somewhat expected at some point in time. So I mentioned unusual, and I mentioned something about casino-type stocks. Well, how about Penn? PENN, stock just underneath 76. We got a buyer, and this is very, very short-term. Matter of fact, both option activities are very short-term, expiring on Friday, October 29th. So here we are, Tuesday the 26th. 9,800 of the October 29th, 80 calls being purchased today in Penn. 32 cents up to 50 cents. Very inexpensive. Just to give you a little bit of how I view stuff like this, I oftentimes will take a look at that, and then I'll even look at strikes a little bit less than 80 to try to find, is there something in there that makes a little bit more sense? I can get a little bit better bang for my buck. And oftentimes you can find that. If not, that's what we're seeing. And that was the activity today, was going all the way up to that 80 strike for those calls. So I mentioned all those EV names and all the extraordinary moves of Tesla specifically. Well, Fisker, this one's hitting today, FSR. Stock trading around 15 and a quarter. We got a buyer of 7,300 of Friday's expiring 16 calls. Doesn't have to make a big move, but it's got to make a move to get up and over and through to be able to get these options to start moving to the upside. 16 cents up to about 26 cents for the Fisker options. Folks, I'll tell you what, if you don't know what I'm talking about, when I'm talking about a lot of this option stuff and people are looking around and we're talking about applied volatilities and all the different things, the elements that go into the pricing model, I'm excited every single day. Why am I excited? Because this is the growth area. This is where things happen. And I got to tell you, derivatives markets are absolutely explosive. I'm Pete Najarian. Have a great day of trading.